Toru, a young man who tends to be weak and timid, is trapped in the shadows of a dark past. Despite that, Toru bravely enrolls in an academy to become an alpha, seeking an opportunity to change his fate. His transformation begins when Toru is forced to share a bed with the most popular and attractive girl in the academy. The strength within him slowly starts to emerge. On a bright Monday in spring, while Toru was on his way to the academy, the sound of bee bells from a girl captivated him. It was the sound of Julie, and he instantly became obsessed with her beauty. However, after Julie left, another girl appeared and offered to walk with him. The girl informed Toru that at the academy, there were no tuition fees to be paid. All educational expenses, accommodation, and food were covered. All the students there focused on intense combat training. Upon arriving at the arena, they heard an announcement for the entrance ceremony, marking the beginning of a hopeful new life at the academy. Shortly after, Toru and the other students sat together, eagerly awaiting a greeting from Sakuya, the student council president. Sakuya enthusiastically welcomed them, and began explaining the routine ceremony for new students. Sakuya asked each student to pair up with the person next to them. As Sakuya explained that they would duel each other, the atmosphere started to feel strange. The tension rose when Sakuya added that the losers would face unexpected consequences. As the students began arguing with each other about the duel, Imari, one of the students, stood up and questioned the decision. Sakuya then explained that the duel was part of the entrance exam for the academy. Amidst the confusion, Toru, hoping to avoid trouble, asked if he could switch partners so he wouldn't have to worry about Imari's father stalking him. Unfortunately, his request also violated the rules that had been set. After Imari told Toru to keep all his worries to himself, Sakuya immediately ordered all the students to begin the duel. With fiery enthusiasm, Julie and her partner activated their flames, starting an exciting battle. The other students followed suit, and soon, bodies started to fall. The weak were quickly defeated, leaving only the strong and experienced. Watching this intense fight, Toru couldn't help but recall traumatic events from his past. Those memories haunted his thoughts, making him more anxious. However, Imari quickly snapped Toru out of his déjà vu, ready to start their duel. Imari activated her flames, but Toru, still hesitant, refused to do the same. Instead, Imari attacked, nearly making a hole in the floor as Toru narrowly dodged. After avoiding 2 more attacks, Toru caught Imari and asked her to surrender. He didn't want to send Imari to the emergency room. As the situation grew more intense, suddenly, an axe flew towards Toru's head. In a split-second emergency, Toru quickly activated his flames and managed to block the attack. Imari looked confused. Usually, flames were weapons formed from one's soul, but for some reason, Toru's had turned into a shield instead. With excitement, Imari exclaimed that he was an unpredictable person. Imari stepped back a few paces, vowing to defeat Toru. As he attacked, Toru's past memories flashed before him again, but this time, he was determined to focus on the fight. Cleverly, Toru knocked Imari's sword out of his hand and apologized before striking. Toru delivered a powerful punch to Imari, even cracking his ribs, sending him flying backward. At the same time, Sakuya called for time and announced that the loser would have to take home what was left of their shattered pride. The atmosphere became tense, and all eyes were on them, waiting to see how this battle would conclude. Moments later, Imari seemed surprised that no one had called an ambulance. With a serious tone, he explained that only their souls could be hurt, since the flames were directly connected to them. After thinking for a moment and recalling his lenient attitude toward Toru, Imari told him to stop pretending to be Superman. In this academy, only the strongest could survive, and Toru needed to be ready to face that reality. To make sure Toru wouldn't forget his words, Imari gave his chest a determined shake before walking away. Not long after that, Toru was walking down the hallway, trying to adjust his sore shoulders, when he heard a familiar voice. Turning around, he saw Aoi, an old friend who always tried to hide the chaos of his life behind a laid-back Sigma personality. Aoi told Toru that they were lab rats injected with Lucifer to activate their flames so the academy could study its effects. Meanwhile, Toru ran ahead of them to class. As soon as he entered, the atmosphere felt different. His classmates were friendly, but Toru just sat quietly at his desk. However, the calmness was suddenly broken when Julie walked into the room. Everyone seemed hypnotized by her beauty. When Julie called Toru's name, he was both surprised and confused. Julie greeted him and sat next to him, making things a little awkward. Toru felt awkward trying to talk to her, but Julie kept avoiding eye contact, as if she couldn't bring herself to look directly at him. Amidst the confusion, a cheerful teacher, who seemed to be obsessed with rabbits, jumped onto the desk. The teacher introduced herself as Rito, their instructor. After asking all the students to introduce themselves, Rito told them that their student IDs also functioned as credit cards loaded with hundreds of thousands each month. Rito then began explaining the school system, which required them to choose a partner for the rest of the school year. At that moment, Toru asked how this was relevant to their training. Rito explained that after graduation, they would join the forces of the Dawn Agency, and because of that, it was important for them to have a partner. Rito added that official pairings would take place over the weekend, but they would need to start living with a temporary partner. Toru tried to approach Aoi for some clarity, but Aoi revealed that their partnership was only temporary, just like their current seating partners. Toru felt desperate as he tried to argue against being paired with Julie. However, Rito described Julie's mental state so clearly that it almost gave Toru a headache. In that moment, Rito used her melon power to silence Toru, leaving everyone in an awkward silence. That night, Aoi was forced to kick Toru out of his room and told him to go find his partner. After rehearsing what to say, Toru walked into the room and saw no one there. Feeling relieved, he thought maybe Julie didn't want to stay with him either. However, that calm feeling didn't last long. A few moments later, Julie walked out of the bathroom wearing only a nightshirt. Her distracting appearance immediately messed with Toru's mind, frying all his dopamine receptors. At the table, after a few minutes of trying to sound confident while talking, Toru suddenly noticed the girl crawling towards him. Toru began battling his inner demons, backing up until he was pinned against the wall. Reflexively, Julie threw a punch at his stomach and asked him to teach her how to take down Imari. When Toru warned her that it was a dangerous skill that could hurt her, Julie began to feel sleepy. She complained of being tired, and before Toru realized it, she had already passed out, curled up in his lap. After having a brief panic attack, Toru carried her to bed, tucked her in, and turned off the lights. But after that, Toru couldn't sleep. When Julie woke up, Toru made her some apple tea. After serving it, Toru proposed a mutually beneficial partnership between them until they were officially paired, and Julie accepted his offer. The next morning, Toru woke up and saw Julie sleeping next to him. Panic set in immediately, and Toru checked to make sure no boundaries had been crossed. Fortunately, Julie was already awake, and they exchanged greetings. Toru tried to ask why Julie had slept in his bed, but the clear image of her face in his mind made it hard for him to focus. After having breakfast in the cafeteria, Toru overheard his classmates talking about him, hoping he wouldn't lose too many aura points. As they sat down, Tomo suddenly appeared with Miyabi and asked to join them. Once they sat, Miyabi's melons seemed to briefly shut down Toru's brain. Tomo then started teaching him the proper way to get his nutrients, while Miyabi hid behind Tomo, trying to avoid Toru's awkward gaze. Not long after, the other students left, and Tomo continued her lecture, which seemed annoying to both of them, especially since they were the only mixed-gender duo there. Julie then told Tomo that she was fine with Toru, which made Toru feel a bit better. In class, Rito explained their abilities, starting with the injection of Lucifer. With help from Tomo and Miyabi's melons, for the lecture, Rito then asked Toru, and the entire class focused intently, listening to the culture thoughts coming from his mind. Toru sat there, avoiding a scolding, while telling Julie to be more careful with her choice of words. Toru then complimented Julie's Japanese, saying it was pretty good thanks to her mother's help. However, realizing her writing skills were still at a toddler's level, Julie tried to ask about it but immediately felt embarrassed. Rito explained how important it was for them to get stronger and level up, as surviving a year without any progress could lead to expulsion. With that statement, Rito asked them to get ready for their first training class. At the sports field shortly after, Tomo's face was down in the dirt as she apologized to Toru for misunderstanding what Julie said. Tomo realized the negative impact her request had on her aura. Although Toru tried to stop her, as Tomo tried to stand up, she bumped into him and managed to grab a baby carrot. When they saw Julie watching them, she looked as though she thought they were trying to become wrestlers. A little while later, Julie started sparring with Tomo, and the entire class paused for a moment to watch their skills, which were already on par with pro MMA fighters. Aoi was impressed by Tomo's fighting ability, and immediately told Toru that Tomo came from an ancient martial arts school that trained the best fighters. However, Toru was more interested in Julie, who was also handling the fight exceptionally well. Aoi then asked Toru about the girl. Toru, shaking his head, replied that he wasn't paying much attention to anything except his already cooked rice since they were only going to live together for a week. They then decided to spar as well to test each other's strength. The girls were super enthusiastic, adjusting their appearances and complimenting each other. As the sun began to set, Toru was already outside the room waiting for Julie to finish her bath. A few moments later, while sipping tea, Toru told Julie that he had learned to fight on his own. He started talking about his childhood training with Aoi at a dojo. As the week went on, their classmates began avoiding sparring with Julie because they were afraid, so Toru helped her and ended up spending most of his time with her. The day before the partner selection, Aoi found Toru waiting for him and immediately called him a simp. Toru tried to deny the accusation and reminded him that they were going to be partners, though Aoi didn't seem as excited about it anymore. As they walked back together, Julie thanked Toru for spending the week with her and asked if he had already chosen a partner. Julie planned to ask Tomo, which made sense to her, so she also mentioned her plan to approach Toru. A little while later, they were standing under the cherry blossom tree, and Julie sincerely admitted that Toru had really caught her staring at him the first day they met. That night, Toru once again found her in his bed. As Toru tried to move away, he saw tears welling up in her eyes as Julie shared something about her father. Without hesitation, Toru took her hand, offering her a bit of comfort. The next day, the partner selection began, but with so many students crowding the area, Toru decided to come back later. On his way out, Toru saw Julie talking with Tomo. When they returned, they encountered two girls who seemed to be discussing something strange they had to do. After handing their ID cards to Yusa, Yusa gave them a cliché oath they were required to say. While trying to figure out the bizarre situation, Tomo and Miyabi appeared. Hearing that they had decided to become partners, Toru asked about Julie and Tomo, which made him feel a bit uneasy. Tomo then mentioned that Julie had declined Tomo's request to partner up. After apologizing to Aoi, Toru ran off to find Julie, searching the campus for her. He kept walking until he finally heard the distinct sound of beads coming from the direction of the clock tower. When Toru arrived, Julie said she was trying to look at her hometown. Toru then asked about the partnership. Julie casually replied that it didn't matter since she was already used to being alone, so Toru offered to be her partner. Despite listing all the reasons he felt unworthy as a partner, to avoid any misunderstandings later on, Toru insisted on partnering with her, using a wrist-locking move to break down the walls between them. Eventually, they activated their flames and recited the oath to formalize their partnership. That night, Julie was once again lying in his bed, but this time, Toru decided to set some boundaries and told her to sleep in her own bed. After a bit of back and forth, Julie confidently stated that Toru gave off a fatherly aura, and her father surely would have ignored such pride. In the end, Toru decided to let her sleep with him again. The next day in class, Rito arranged the seating according to their chosen partners. As usual, Toru tried hard to convince his classmates that he was innocent. After that, Rito announced the setup for a mock flame battle, aimed at testing the strength of their duo. Rito informed them that they would be fighting anyone except their own partners. Later, Toru trained with Julie in the forest and, unfortunately, lost for the 4th round in a row. Julie commented that Toru was even weaker than a fully aware Senetsu. Slightly defensive, Toru blamed his inability on the shield he was using, so Julie offered to give him some tips. Julie tried to slip in a kiss while demonstrating a move, but Toru was too confused to understand her intention. Julie then explained that she had learned the move after watching Thor in Infinity War, and told him to give it a try. As the energy release nearly broke a tree branch, Toru remarked that it was a dangerous skill. He didn't like using it because it could hurt others. As Toru was about to leave, he spotted Miyabi right before she fainted from exhaustion after running too much. A few moments later, Toru carried her on his back. However, Miyabi soon woke up and started squirming, making his balance waver due to her sweaty melons and rice cakes. After some time, Miyabi finally calmed down. Toru explained that he was going to take her to the hospital, and Miyabi thanked him. She then shared that the excessive training was because she didn't want to hold Tomo back with her Sakura-level skills. Smiling, Toru suggested that Miyabi try watching a David Goggins podcast for some motivation. In a dark past, Toru once found his comrades lifeless and burned in their dojo. In his dream, Toru saw a swordsman strike down a girl who tried to approach him, and he woke up with fear gripping his heart. The next night, Rito made an announcement that electrified the atmosphere, signaling the start of the mock battle. Rito gave them 2 hours to defeat their opponents. After discussing their plan to take down whoever they encountered, Toru and Julie ignited their flames with enthusiasm. As soon as they dashed in, their first opponent launched a surprise attack, but they easily took him down. After successfully defeating another duo, they encountered 2 girls dressed in nurse outfits with corn hubs striking enough to cause a distraction. Julie quickly prepared and took them out. With 1 hour left and most of the competition eliminated, they decided to head inside the school building. They had barely made it through the hall when suddenly, Tomo appeared, launching a chain mace attack. After discussing how excited they were to finally find out who was stronger, they began their duel. Toru easily blocked Tomo's attack, so Tomo decided to get serious, and used a special technique that blocked all escape routes in the hall. On the other hand, Miyabi had already activated her flames, but the spear she held was too heavy for her. Eventually, Miyabi attacked Toru, who quickly used his shield to fend off the attack. A few seconds later, Miyabi admitted defeat and felt sad, but Toru encouraged her to keep practicing so she could reach his level. While they were doing positive affirmations, Julie stood tall, seemingly unfazed by anything, effortlessly blocking every attack Tomo threw at her. Julie made all those attacks look like just a walk in the park. After securing the victory, Julie told Tomo to try fighting with her head next time. A little while later, Tomo left with Miyabi. Meanwhile, Toru was telling Julie about his argument with Aoi when they heard a scream. Without hesitation, they ran toward the source of the sound, where they found Aoi unconscious next to Tatsu. Rito appeared with a worried expression, and they all tried to wait until Aoi could get back up. However, at that moment, Aoi warned them to be more careful. They all dodged just before Rito could do it, and in the confusion, Rito revealed her dark side, telling them to brace themselves for whatever might happen next. After checking himself, Toru found blood on his palm and became increasingly confused. Rito seriously explained that firearms could actually hurt people if used correctly and charged into attack. But before Rito could do that, Julie quickly stepped in to stop her. Without hesitation, Rito kicked Toru and almost slashed Julie's face. Rito explained that the flames from the weapon could heal people, but she also told them to keep it a secret. Next, Rito took Aoi's sword and destroyed it to demonstrate the pain it could inflict. Rito explained that anyone caught in the shattered flames would end up powerless for a full day. They were curious why Rito was trying to clap their hands, so Rito casually replied that it was how she got paid, then attacked them at super speed. Julie tried to block the attack, but she was thrown into the wall, and Tura felt his insides get wrecked after taking Rito's knee. Before Rito could finish him off, Julie tried to protect Tura, but she ended up getting knocked down again. With his shield, Tura blocked the flames that ignited again, but as he slowly pressed his flames on his shoulder, Rito called him weak, which immediately reminded Tura of his past. Feeling annoyed, Tura attacked to launch his finishing blow, but Rito managed to dodge, and his attack ended up destroying the classroom wall. After praising that attack, Rito blew up classrooms throughout the building, giving them little time to discuss tactics. However, before they could finalize their plan, Rito caught up to them. Julie decided to protect Tura. As Rito attacked, Tura jumped to protect his reputation as a Sigma and started taking a barrage of attacks from Rito's sword with a tough attitude. After being forced to kneel, Rito told him to say his last words. However, at the last moment, Tura signaled Julie, and she quickly blocked Rito with her sword. Taking advantage of that opening, Tura charged up his fist to attack, and Rito thought she could dodge once again. But Rito quickly shifted her weight and used her sword to block the attack. However, the force of the attack was too great, and eventually, her sword shattered in her hands. The next morning, they celebrated by enjoying a cup of tea while struggling with the lingering injuries. After hearing that Rito had been captured, Tura started to get confused, trying to understand what it all meant. However, the pain in his shoulder was becoming increasingly bothersome. Julie then got up to check on Tura, but accidentally fell right onto his injured shoulder. At that moment, Tomo came along with Miyabi, bringing some supplies, and was immediately shocked to find Tura lying on the floor. Tura tried to explain their situation, asking Julie about the reserves she mentioned, but Julie decided to pretend to be clueless again. That night, Tura had the same nightmare and woke up apologizing to Julie for screaming. Tura then walked towards the balcony to get some fresh air. A few moments later, Julie asked about someone Tura kept mentioning in his sleep. However, not long after that, Tura felt frustrated and went back to the room. Julie called him back and unbuttoned her shirt to show the scar on her back, revealing that she was just like Tura. The next day, Sarah was already waiting by the lake with a towel in hand, until a goddess who seemed full of plot, named Lilith, emerged from the water and took the towel. Lilith then stated that she wanted to meet someone. After dreaming about Julie's scar, Tura tried to go back to sleep, but his hand landed on something that felt strange. When Tura realized he was mishandling a melon, he tried to pull away, but the hand grabbed his and put it back. And as Tura tried to explain, he fell and hit his head. A few moments later, Tura asked if they were too small to be noticed, then apologized by repeatedly banging his head on the floor. Shortly after, they met Tomo and Miyabi before heading to class, where Tura was surprised to see Aoi and Ryutaro already back. Ryutaro tried to act tough despite being injured, but Tomo told him to stop pretending, as his injury was serious. Aoi thought Tura had told the girls about it, so Tura explained that they were the ones who helped after the fight with Rito. When Aoi thanked the girls by bowing, Tura got scared because he had never seen Aoi bow to anyone before, and his reaction made Miyabi feel anxious. After calming down, they started talking about Rito and hoped they wouldn't have to deal with her again. However, not long after, Rito entered and told them to sit down for the lesson. After class ended, Tura tried to leave when they stopped him and demanded to know why Rito was back after almost putting them all in a coffin. Before Rito could explain, Sakuya showed something, and they went to her office for an explanation. Sakuya told them that Rito had been reinstated as their instructor after they evaluated her methods and found them beneficial for their objectives. Tomo tried to reason with common sense, but Sakuya explained that the academy was willing to do whatever it took to achieve their goal of forming the perfect duo. As compensation for their near-death experience, Sakuya promised to ensure they would advance to level 2 after the upcoming sublimation ritual. While they were talking, Lilith arrived at the academy by helicopter. Not long after, in class, Rito taught them about the differences in power according to their levels, but Tura was lost in thought about everything that had happened. At that moment, Lilith entered the classroom, and everyone was captivated by her beauty as she walked toward Tura's desk. With her face just inches from Tura's, Lilith ordered him to follow her outside. However, Tura reminded her that they were still in class, and Lilith asked Rito for permission, which she gave without objection. Aoi tried to talk to her about her business, but Lilith told him to shut his tiny mouth. In the end, Tura decided to go with her, as if there was no other choice. A few moments later, Sarah served a cup of tea, which she claimed had a royal touch. Lilith got straight to the point, revealing that she would be his new partner. After Tura told her that he already had a partner, Lilith casually responded that it didn't matter. Lilith felt special and considered herself an exception. With full confidence, she admitted that she had come all the way from England just for Tura. However, Tura quickly remembered the Academy's rule that forbade changes to their partner selection. Lilith firmly asserted that the rule didn't apply to her. She then demanded a response from Toru, convinced that her display of feminine power would make him give in. But with a smile still fixed on his face, Toru brutally rejected her offer, thanking her for the tea before getting up to leave. Lilith tried to stop him, giving him a second chance to reconsider. Toru explained that he wasn't into all the nonsense about her arrogant trust fund. After that, Rito ordered Toru to run around the academy, as he was the only one who could be punished for the disruption. Toru was cooling off in the bath when Julie knocked on the door, saying she wanted to give him a towel. After Toru told her to drop it by the door, he saw Julie standing there, shivering for a moment before stepping back inside. After that, Toru made some tea and sat next to Julie to drink it. Julie then asked if she could share his bed again. Toru tried to refuse, but Julie's face and the memory of her melons made it hard for him to decide. In the end, Toru suggested they go out and shop for new clothes. They decided to visit the mall on their next break. Toru celebrated his success in avoiding sharing the bed, but his happiness disappeared instantly when Julie called to him from the bed and told him to come in. On their next break, they took a train to the city to visit the mall that Miyabi had recommended. Once they arrived, Toru began giving instructions to ensure Julie wouldn't get lost. Unfortunately, Julie had already been kidnapped by a group of kids on a school trip. After successfully rescuing her, they stopped for a moment to catch their breath, and Julie grabbed his hand, trying to avoid being kidnapped again. As they walked through the mall, people kept staring at them, so they decided to step into a store to escape the attention. However, when Julie entered the fitting room, the store owner couldn't help but gush about how beautiful she was. His obsession grew even more when Julie showed them the first outfit and decided to keep trying on more clothes. After paying for the clothes that would be shipped to them, they spent the rest of the day hopping from store to store, though Toru almost got kidnapped again. After shopping, they decided to take a break and have some gelato. Julie tried to persuade him to feed her, but Toru refused, considering himself too Sigma for something like that. Yet, once again, with the goddess-like charm Julie possessed, Toru eventually gave in and fed her. Not wanting to be outdone, Julie also offered to feed Toru, breaking all the stiff atmosphere that had been between them. Suddenly, Julie started acting as if she was drunk from too much rum raisin, and when she looked at Toru, it was as if she could see him in 3 places at once. Without them realizing it, Tomo and Miyabi had been secretly following them the whole time, and now it was time to reveal their cultural pursuits. When a group of ex-athletes approached them to talk, they tried to leave, but one of them grabbed Miyabi. After Tomo swatted his hand away, the group tried to use force, but suddenly Toru appeared with Julie to stop them. Before the fight could begin, 2 of the athletes collapsed from gunshots, and Toru turned to see Lilith using a rifle to take down 2 more. As shoppers began to gather, Lilith absorbed her rifle and left, and Toru finally understood what Lilith meant by being an exception. A few days later, the girls were trying to convince themselves that Lilith really did have a gun, so Toru explained what he saw. Julie reminded them of the usual method of weapon transformation, which was normally limited to regular weapons. Toru then wondered why Lilith was skipping school again. Meanwhile, Lilith was at home, happily polishing her double-barrel rifle while staring at photos of Toru. Not long after, Tomo jumped into the pool with a fast swimming style, as if she were possessed by the spirit of a dolphin, leaving the entire class in awe. They had all gone through the sublimation ritual to reach level 2, and while Toru was trying to figure out his new level, Aoi used the volleyball to part his friends like the Red Sea. Ryutaro, not wanting to be outdone, responded with a slam that triggered a mini tsunami. Toru then noticed Miyabi swimming while carrying a balloon. He tried to praise her for finally securing first place in a competition. After helping her, Miyabi accidentally stopped to stare at the lines on his abs and almost asked for a sausage when Tomo interrupted to give her praise. Soon after, they heard cheers from the other students who were excited to see Julie swim. After Julie dove in, everyone expected to see some mermaid swimming techniques. But after a minute passed, concern began to grow. Underwater, Julie was kicking her legs in one spot, as if she were confused. Toru dove in, and moments later, Julie resurfaced, surrounded by her friends, explaining that she hadn't taken swimming lessons back in her hometown. Toru looked shocked to learn there was something she wasn't skilled at. He handed her a towel to cool down, trying to stay positive about the near-fatal mistake that had just happened. Toru suggested they spend the rest of the day testing their new levels. Finally, when class ended, Toru walked with Julie, who then asked for swimming lessons. Just at that moment, Toru heard Lilith and left Julie to meet her. As usual, Toru tried to assert his dominance, explaining that he just wanted to know why Lilith was skipping class. Lilith responded by saying that she had already completed high school and was only there to pass the time. She told Toru that maybe that's why she was a loner and easily irritated. Toru tried to ask about the mall incident, but Lilith cut him off, saying she would only give him an answer if he agreed to go on a date. Just then, Lilith's helicopter landed, and a few minutes later, Rito was already in class, struggling to control her temper while their friends wondered where Toru had gone. Eventually, they found themselves at an amusement park, and Lilith couldn't stop acting like a dog that had just been let loose. After squeezing her arm into her chest, Lilith dragged Toru off to start their date. Meanwhile, Julie went to check the courtyard to see if Toru had returned. Toru spent the day being dragged around the park, losing aura points due to all the annoying activities and the beta-level vibe Lilith was creating for him. After giving Toru a little time to rest and ensure his sanity, they continued to a new spot where they could shoot monsters with laser guns. Seeing Lilith's shooting skills, Toru immediately complimented her, and then Lilith gave him a crash course on assembling some military-grade weapons. After Lilith scored the highest in the shooting game, they stepped outside just as fireworks started to go off, making the atmosphere even more festive. Toru then asked Lilith why she used her bonfire in public. Lilith replied that it was her way of putting on a special show for him. After stating that her chaotic fire shield made Toru the perfect partner, Lilith boldly set aside her feminist pride and asked him again to be her partner. However, Toru's response immediately deflated Lilith's spirit. Later, Julie had just finished her bath when Toru returned and noticed that the dorm was locked for the night. Julie signaled to him from above, so Toru jumped in and thanked her. But soon after, they heard the sound of a guard approaching, and Toru quickly pushed Julie aside. After the guard left, Toru began recounting his date with Lilith and also mentioned her second request for partnership, which he brutally rejected. Unlike the previous refusal, this time Toru decided to leave a lasting impression with some harsh words, even slapping before shouting that Lilith hated him and then storming off. Toru apologized to Julie for not telling her sooner, and Julie thanked him for choosing her. As the weather grew colder, Julie hugged him to stay warm, and as they shared warmth, Miyabi appeared at their window. Tomo, bored of Miyabi's body odor, told her to take a bath. However, soon after, Miyabi began undressing while revealing her mischievous plan, making Tomo reconsider their partnership. The next day, Toru was once again running his punishment marathon on the field before resting in class. Rito then informed them about the upcoming series of battles between them and the second years, explaining that they would fight without their respective partners. On the day of the event, Rito explained that the second years were on the same level as them so everyone could understand what they were up against. Rito seemed excited for the fight, as did Toru, who had clearly forgotten about his near-death experience fighting Rito. While they were all chatting, Lilith suddenly interrupted the second year's warm-up session, challenging everyone to fight her because she was bored. They thought she was joking, so Lilith shot one of them in the face with her rifle to show she was serious. Moments later, the entire second-year class was knocked out, leaving Sakria frustrated that her event had been cut short. Lilith then decided to take on the entire first-year class as well. That night, at the shopping mall, the students hid in the building's corners, planning an ambush against Lilith with arrows they had prepared. They fired at her, thinking they had finally beaten her. But when the dust settled, they were shocked to see Lilith had caught the arrows with her fingers. Not giving up, they decided to attack all at once, but that only made it easier for Lilith to knock them down one by one, like helpless flies. After dealing with them, Lilith spotted Toru and told him she wouldn't hold back even though she had feelings for him. Lilith prepared to attack, but Toru asked for a break to apologize for the double rejection she'd faced. Lilith thought Toru was trying to ease her burden, but instead, he asked her to transform into her beast mode. Toru genuinely wanted a serious fight, claiming it would help them restart as friends. After considering his odd logic, they both jumped back and got ready. While Lilith began launching her attacks with enthusiasm, Toru hid behind a pillar, wondering why they had to book an entire mall for their fight. Lilith casually responded that she just enjoyed spending money. As Lilith kept firing, Toru dodged the bullets and used his shield to block her shots before trying to counterattack, but he failed. Lilith sensed Tomo's chain and tried to block it, but then Ryutaro joined the attack with his staff. Lilith retreated to a safe spot, quickly reading their immature plan to trap her. Once Lilith was gone, they all jumped down with confidence. Strangely, Miyabi decided to use her rice cakes as cushions for her fall. After Toru helped her up, Tomo gathered everyone to discuss tactics and pulled out a map of the mall so they could devise a plan to catch Lilith at just the right time. A few moments later, they split into two groups and moved toward Lilith's location while checking their surroundings. When they reached a gap, Toru's spider sense started tingling, and suddenly, Ryutaro fell, hit by one of Lilith's earlier shots. Lilith then dropped her camouflage and revealed herself. Before Lilith could shoot them, Toru tried to attack to divert her focus, but his attack failed, and Lilith quickly countered. After leaping to the upper floor and claiming Toru as the main course, Julie jumped after her, intent on capturing her. Toru tried to warn Julie, but it was too late. Julie ended up taking a brutal kick that sent her flying into the glass ceiling. As Julie fell, Lilith tried to finish her off, but Tomo suddenly appeared at the last second to save her. A few moments later, they regrouped to discuss their failure, and Toru noticed that Tomo had been hit by one of Lilith's shots. With Julie's shoulder injured and Miyabi's spear too heavy for close combat, Toru began considering admitting defeat. But that's when Julie realized something important. Moments later, Julie decided to talk to Toru about her weakness. Toru cheered her up and promised to keep protecting her, making Julie feel better. However, not long after, Lilith showed up and reminded them about the battle that was supposed to happen. In a condescending tone, Lilith mocked them all, claiming they were too weak to face her. After that, Lilith started shooting, and Julie wasn't going to back down. Julie charged forward to counterattack. As Lilith tossed her sword aside, Julie managed to activate one of her techniques just in time to block the shot, though it still didn't manage to hit its target. Then it was Aoi's turn to try his luck. Unfortunately, Aoi immediately got hit by a vicious kick to the neck and fell to the floor. Toru tried to get up, but he was shot right in the stomach. Despite that, Toru still claimed that he was where he wanted to be and used his attack to destroy the ground around him. After jumping to escape, Aoi and Julie jumped after him, determined to take down Lilith. However, after Aoi was defeated, they hoped Julie could launch an attack while Lilith was reloading her ammo. It turned out that Lilith surprised them all by shooting Julie into the air and telling Toru that she didn't need to reload. At that moment, Julie managed to slice her arm and drop her gun. They had actually anticipated that shot and were prepared to face it after recalling the earlier mall incident. Toru told Lilith to admit defeat, but she refused to give up and prepared for the next round. However, at the same time, Toru suddenly got shot in the shoulder, and it wasn't from Lilith. It turned out that a squad of armored soldiers appeared and demanded that Lilith attend a meeting with someone named Equipment Smith. Firmly, Lilith refused their demand and accepted the bullets as a consequence. Julie and Aoi immediately charged at the soldiers, but they were easily thrown back. After the leader of the soldiers pointed a weapon at Miyabi's head, Lilith agreed to go with them and apologized to Toru for not finishing the match. Not long after, Toru decided to go retrieve Lilith, and Aoi agreed to help him. Toru told Miyabi to stop acting like a baby and come along. Lilith was riding an escalator with the soldiers when they saw Toru above, demanding that Lilith come back to them. Toru tried to force Lilith, but she refused. The soldiers began raining bullets down on them. In a panic, Toru attacked with a punch that initially seemed ineffective until the ground caved in and the escalator collapsed. Quickly, Toru grabbed Lilith before she could be crushed by the debris, while the others helped deal with the soldiers. After that, Toru helped Lilith activate her gun before they both took down their commander. A little while later, they all decided to have one final duel. To signal the start of the fight, Aoi used the coin toss as a marker. Meanwhile, the main soldier survived and called headquarters to explain their failure. However, his boss seemed more interested in the clash data and all the chaos caused by someone referred to as the Fire Witch. The next day, they went to check on Toru, who was lying in the infirmary after nearly becoming disabled. Shortly after, Lilith appeared to fulfill her promise that they could be friends. After confirming that Toru still wanted to be Julie's partner, Lilith gave him a kiss on the cheek and vowed to make him her future husband. A few days passed, and Miyabi was taking a bath, continuously thinking about how pitiful she was during the clash with the armored soldiers at the mall. Suddenly, Tomo interrupted her mental sabotage to give her a pep talk and suggested she watch a feminist podcast to lift her spirits. Not long after that, Toru was on the lower deck of the ship with Julie, who wasn't feeling well due to sickness. With the upcoming beach class, Toru didn't want to ruin Julie's experience, but he was more concerned about how she felt. So, Toru told Julie to take a nap on his lap. As Julie fell asleep, Miyabi appeared and asked if Julie was okay. Toru explained about her fever and noticed that Miyabi was standing in the sun, then told her to sit with them. Miyabi took that opportunity to press her melons against Toru's body. Soon after, Aoi showed up with Ryutaro to call them for Rito's announcement, and Tomo also came to gather the girls. A few moments later, they all gathered on the deck, and Rito told them that they had to swim to the island in their uniforms. Upon taking a closer look, Toru saw Sakuya watching them and instantly knew that the psychotic idea came from her. After Rito showed them the map of their final destination, she told those who hadn't leveled up to avoid dragging their partners down. Then, she congratulated them as the deck split in two, dumping everyone into the water. While everyone swam toward the island, Julie remained stuck on her back, feeling like a rock in the ocean. Just at that moment, they heard the sound of a helicopter and saw Lilith in the sky, excited about the trip. After telling Sarah to hit the brakes, Lilith took off her uniform and dove into the water, grinning at Toru and mocking Julie for lacking basic skills. About an hour later, they reached the beach, and Toru struggled to get his lungs filled with air, while Julie apologized for being a burden. After that, Lilith used her body to give him shade from the scorching sun, and Toru thanked her for being selfless. Lilith tried to take the opportunity to get a kiss, but Toru ran off, saying he really wanted to get a tan. However, just then they heard Julie's voice. When they got there, Julie pointed to a plot cover floating in the sea after she tossed it, following the gust of wind. At that moment, Tomo was about to cross the waterfall when Miyabi started feeling bad for being a burden to both of them. Tomo tried to cheer her up, but then Miyabi stumbled while trying to cross, soaking both of them. In the afternoon, they finally arrived at the camp and Lilith was getting ready to go inside. However, Toru called her back to wrap her feet, so Lilith wouldn't get hurt. Feeling jealous, Julie tried to get Toru's attention, but a tree branch almost exposed her small plan, so she pretended not to notice. Suddenly, they felt an attack and had to dodge several dagger-wielding ninjas, whom they assumed were from the armored soldiers. Shortly after that, they saw a torch lit by a masked ninja bursting into flames. Meanwhile, near the waterfall, Tomo and Miyabi had already started dodging the traps and incoming attacks. After Miyabi got caught in one of the traps, Tomo stuck to her resolve. However, the ninjas were starting to become too many to handle. Remembering the pep talk from Toru, Miyabi got frustrated and finally activated her fire. She used her power to destroy the trap before charging in and defeating the ninjas. Meanwhile, Toru and the girls were in the forest, facing off against the ninjas. Unfortunately, the surrounding trees made attacking difficult, so they found themselves stuck in a tough situation. Lilith was almost hit by an attack, but Julie quickly protected her. The two then decided to combine their strengths and look for a solution. After Julie gave Lilith an idea, Lilith jumped into the trees. Julie then activated her ability to perform a vegetable slaughter, cutting down all the surrounding trees and simultaneously revealing the hidden ninjas behind them. As Lilith came back down to finish things off, Toru was still struggling to find the ninjas and was almost hit by fallen wood. Suddenly, a ninja jumped from a tree branch and dove straight at them, but the ninja was electrocuted upon realizing it was Imari, who had to tell Toru to stop squeezing her melons. Later, they were outside the academy, listening to Imari explain that they were at a branch of the academy used to train the main students. Imari recalled her earlier meeting with Toru and explained that after being sent out, they were offered the chance to join the branch if they wanted. Not long after that, they tried to catch up when Julie interrupted, complaining about how hard it was to find meat. Toru then gave his last sausage to Julie, who used it to demonstrate her oral skills. However, Lilith appeared with a plate full of meat and asked him to feed her. As Julie helped feed Lilith, Toru noticed President Sakuya and ran over to her, thanking her for keeping Imari at the academy. Sakuya then reminded him that she didn't want to waste her test subject and reminded Toru of his mission to form the perfect duo as she walked away. At that moment, Miyabi finally got her flower, proving that she wasn't completely useless. Tomo also joined in to cheer her up. After running towards the dining area, Miyabi met up with Toru, who also praised her. Just before they rejoined the group, Lilith called out to them. While they were all enjoying the reunion with their friends, Kevin was preparing for his final farewell. Kevin followed Edward's instructions, making final adjustments before the selection mission. Toward the end of the day, Toru finished setting up the tent and told Julie to get inside. However, Julie then handed him one of her plot covers and told him to kiss it if he wanted to. As the sun rose, Toru tried to get a good stretch, but suddenly felt the ground rumble and saw Tomo running toward him. Tomo jumped like a gymnast with her gear and landed on the ground, apologizing for the misunderstanding about what she saw in his tent earlier. The girls had already explained everything to her and accepted her mistake. But now Tomo was worried about her perfect rice cakes, which were positioned for some dog-like pounding. Her apology caught everyone's attention, and her morning adventure was almost revealed. However, Miyabi quickly reminded them about training with Rito. She didn't want to get on the bad side of the bipolar bunny, but Imari, who hadn't experienced her bad side, felt more at ease. Over the next few days, Miyabi treated the trip as if it were the prequel to her love story with Toru, while the others managed to survive all the hardships. On the last night of their training, Rito gave them a day off to have fun. Lilith immediately ran to Toru, discussing the clapping session that would last all day. After Julie interrupted and dragged Lilith away, Toru tried to talk to Aoi. However, Aoi seemed bored with guys who preferred girls over boys, so he walked away. Miyabi saw the opportunity and approached Toru. She asked if he wanted to hang out with her and her friends on their day off. Toru agreed, even though Miyabi didn't know of any cool hangout spots. Toru then reminded her they could go to the beach, remembering how Rito's training made the sea feel like hell to him. The next day, the heat began to burn Toru's feet, while Aoi relaxed in a hammock, consulting with the gym rat god. Suddenly, Julie came out in her swimsuit, almost blinding Toru. The other girls appeared too, asking his opinion on their almost broken relationships. Not long after, they started getting into the water. Rito stopped Toru to ask for personal praise, so Toru told her she had the driest box he'd ever felt, almost losing his head in the process. They spent the rest of the day swimming and playing various games that Toru usually hid underwater. Later, as Toru sat on the beach, Miyabi appeared and asked him out on a date. However, before Toru could respond, he noticed Julie trying to swim alone and immediately ran into the water to protect her. After a wave pushed them back to the shore, Toru's mind started to explode as he saw plenty of melons. He quickly turned around to shield his eyes and pressed his hands to his face, saying that Julie didn't want anyone else to see. Then Julie asked for help to get her top back. As they got back in the water, Miyabi struggled hard to hide parts of her body. Later in the afternoon, Toru was in the hot springs trying to relax when he suddenly heard cheerful voices from the other bath. He dove underwater to protect his thoughts. Rito brought Miyabi to paradise with her top-tier squeezing techniques, and Tomo wanted in on the fun too. So, Rito helped Tomo experience true happiness, while Julie hugged her, hoping some of her estrogen would rub off. As they continued teasing each other, Imari asked Miyabi about her feelings for Toru. After assessing the competition, Miyabi felt her chances were slim. She then asked Imari if she also liked Toru. However, with the distance between them, making it impossible to ever get close enough to be serious, Imari decided to stay in the friend zone and encouraged Miyabi to give it her best shot with Toru. On the way back, Miyabi reflected on Imari's advice and unfortunately slipped, twisting her ankle. Imari saw this as an opportunity for some romance and told Toru to carry Miyabi. Imari then found an excuse to take the other girls away so they could have some space. Rito and Lilith knew exactly what Imari was planning. However, in the end, they decided to let Miyabi have her moment and left as well. During the walk back, they talked about the first time Toru had to carry Miyabi. Miyabi then asked Toru to give her a nickname, just like he did for the other girls. After giving each other names, Toru continued carrying Miyabi until they reached the edge of the cliff to watch the sunset. A little while later, they walked together along the shoreline. But suddenly, Toru stopped and took a moment to find the courage before finally confessing his feelings to Miyabi. Meanwhile, Lilith was in Sakuya's office, discussing their rainy mission conference to create the perfect duo. Sakuya then informed Lilith about the attack plan for that night, which they hoped would turn out well for Imari and the other branch students. Back on the beach, Miyabi shared her feelings with Toru and asked if they could go out together. The confession took Toru by surprise. However, just as he was about to answer, a wave of intense PTSD hit him, reminding him of the times when his weakness caused him to lose someone he loved. Toru declined, saying he was too weak to fall in love, and apologized for even bringing it up before Miyabi ran off. Now, Toru remained on the beach, reflecting on everything. Suddenly, an explosion sounded, and Toru saw the campsite engulfed in flames. As Libra fell from the sky, they opened fire on the students with machine guns. As the soldiers took over the camp, the group activated their weapons and began fighting to protect the injured students. In a monitoring room somewhere in the building, Sarah reviewed the footage and confirmed that these were the same soldiers from the mall, now returning with reinforcements. Lilith began to worry that her new friends might be sent to heaven, but Sakuya assured her that the soldiers did not intend to massacre them. Lilith then asked for an update on the reinforcements they had sent to the main school. Sarah displayed footage from the main school, which was also under ambush. Sakuya stated that they were likely targeting the underground research facility, but she had already made preparations. Sakuya then signaled Rito and handed her a bottle of Lucifol so Rito could use her powers without restrictions. As she was about to head out, Rito injected herself and started rampaging. On the other hand, Imari's teammate looked very unwell and wanted to empty his stomach. After Imari managed to save him, the soldiers began to approach as the gang's strength slowly started to wane. Suddenly, Toru appeared and asked about their plan. That was when they heard a maniacal laugh from the rooftop. They saw Rito vowing to turn the soldier into ground meat. As they began to empty their weapon clips at Rito, she jumped and stumbled her way down, brutally sweeping them all with her sword. After defeating most of the soldiers, they tried to pile on her, hoping to take her down. However, Rito retaliated with flames that scorched them. Seeing her insane level of power, their commander immediately ordered them to use the lethal ram. But Rito easily blocked the bullets, and with one swing of her sword she turned them into soil biomass. Not satisfied with that, Rito decided to wipe them all out and show her special skills, which could only be performed with fire at level 4 or higher. After activating the Wheel of Death, Rito let it spin, destroying the remaining soldiers, tearing apart their armor, and turning them into frozen humans. Toru approached her and asked if Rito had held her own against them. Rito could hardly contain her laughter at seeing them, who clearly thought they were stronger than her. After that, Tomo caught up with them to ask about Miyabi, who hadn't returned since her heart was broken. At that moment, Sarah had just received a call from the main school, where all the Libras had been eliminated by one person. Lilith praised Sakuya's leadership skills when Kevin came with his troops and asked Sakuya to surrender. Lilith immediately jumped in to protect Sakuya, and Kevin ordered the soldiers to take her out. However, they were the ones who had fallen due to his gunfire. After giving Kevin one last warning, she decided to change her face, pulled out her blaster, and blew up the entire room. They saw the smoke from the explosion and decided to go in. However, Tomo wanted to find Miyabi and Imari. Feeling bad about convincing her to confess, Imari decided to help track both of them down. Inside the building, they found Lilith, who was almost out of energy but still urged them to go help Sakuya. A little while later, Sakuya was already on the boat with Kevin, preparing to leave the island. Just then, Sakuya saw a shadow in the forest, and before Kevin noticed it, Toru and Julie jumped onto the ship. Kevin stepped out a few seconds later and gave them the option to continue living by jumping into the water. Toru refused the offer, and Julie told him about her swimming troubles. In the end, they decided to just fight. Julie charged at Kevin with her sword, but Kevin easily dodged. Then Toru tried to land a punch, but Kevin caught it with his hand and slowly began to crush Toru's fist. After Julie separated them, they took turns attacking, but still couldn't land a hit. Then, as Kevin blocked a kick from Julie, he didn't see Toru rushing in and taking a brutal punch to the gut. Toru tried to go inside to find Sakuya, but Kevin got back up and removed his armor. Kevin told them about the unit that made soldiers like him far superior to fire, and then they resumed fighting. But this time, Kevin won. Toru launched quick attacks, but none of them hit. Julie also fell, and they took a step back to catch their breath. After they attacked again, Kevin drove a knife into Toru's thigh, and Julie tried to get revenge. However, Julie got kneed in the gut and staggered in pain before sinking. Kevin threw a knife to help ease his pain, but Toru managed to block it and promised to protect him. That statement reminded Kevin of his past. With a hint of emotion, Kevin left another blade in Toru's shoulder before brutally kicking him. Hearing his scream, Julie remembered the day when she had no father, and her anger exploded. Kevin told her to wait her turn, but before he could blink, Julie had already ignited and slashed his chest. That was just the first cut as Julie tore Kevin's jacket and blasted him against the side of the ship in 2 minutes. It took a while for your ex to finish it, but Julie was still rampaging. Toru tried to calm her down and almost got caught in the crossfire. However, that was when Julie fainted. Kevin got up and asked if Toru still had any confidence left, and when Toru insisted he would protect him, Kevin said that Toru was too weak. At that moment, Edward called Kevin to cancel his mission since Kevin had achieved his goal. Kevin promised to meet Toru again before jumping into the sea to look cool. Not long after that, Sakuya returned to the school building where Lilith was waiting after her melon was wrapped up. Sakuya told her what happened on the ship, while Lilith received a shocking call that she already knew about. After telling Toru how Julie lost her father, Julie shared that it was her killer who gave her that scar. Julie came to the academy hoping to become strong enough to finally take revenge. Toru took her hand, and they both promised to become stronger for each other. On the other hand, Miyabi was with Edward, asking if Edward could help her become stronger. Edward praised Miyabi for acknowledging her own weaknesses before showing her the latest version of the suit. The next day, Toru and Julie were already on the boat, leaving the island. Earlier, Tomo was still trying to find Miyabi while Toru regretted his brutal decision to reject Miyabi. Rito told them to start packing, but both of them firmly refused. They preferred to find Miyabi first. Rito, starting to lose patience, then changed personality and told them to pack up themselves, saying that Rito didn't want to do it like the Liberians did. Main Academy, Toru was practicing sparring with Tomo, but his mind remained focused on the missing Miyabi. Imari had promised to find her before they left, but so far, there had been no news of her whereabouts. Toru's overly active thoughts made his movements clumsy, giving Tomo the opportunity to slam him to the ground and lock his head with her elbow. While Toru was impressed with Tomo's ability to stay focused despite Miyabi still being missing, Julie looked worried as her boyfriend was being choked by the melons Tomo had. Rito stopped Tomo, reminding her of the way she attacked. Rito had to explain the situation to Tomo, who felt embarrassed and finally released Toru. Not long after, Tomo requested a second round and immediately headed for the shower. After asking for a towel from Miyabi, Tomo remembered that Miyabi was still missing. Memories of the times Tomo chased after Miyabi while she was running surfaced in her mind, and Tomo turned on the shower to calm herself while crying. A little while later, in class, the other students began to worry about Miyabi. They heard news that Miyabi was in the hospital after sustaining serious injuries. Toru, who actually knew that Miyabi was missing, felt lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, a pair of melons pressed against him, making him close his eyes for the guessing game. Toru knew it was Lilith's melons, and a wave of happiness washed over him as he felt as if he could sense Lilith's love from a mile away. However, not long after, Toru felt a pair of mini melons doing the same thing and knew it was Julie, who also claimed to hold the key to his heart and was trying to rub it in Lilith's face. After Tomo went inside, Lilith started making moves with her mega melons, and Toru suggested to Julie that maybe Lilith was trying to cheer them up. Julie felt she'd had enough of that weird cultural activity for one day, so she closed her eyes. After experiencing the same nightmare, where Toru lost his sister to a psychotic samurai, Toru woke up. Julie checked on him attentively before hugging him tightly to ease his pain. The next day, Toru was called to Sakuya's office. There, Sakuya thanked him for saving her on the island. Sakuya also gave him permission to proceed to level 4 through the sublimation ritual. However, when Toru asked why the others weren't allowed to advance despite helping during the assault, Sakuya replied that Toru was the only irregular one. Sakuya then reminded him of the real mission: to gain power so Toru would no longer have to experience a tragic past. As his thoughts drifted to the time Julie rampaged on the ship and the mental image of her dark side, Toru felt uncertain about it. Sakuya handed him a bottle and stated that the world wouldn't wait patiently for Toru to overcome his mental issues. Sakuya also added that they would face greater challenges ahead, especially with the upcoming RAIN conference and the possible appearance of Edward Walker, the founder of Libra. Not long after that, Julie prepared to enjoy their daily tea, but her mood was immediately ruined when Toru returned. The next day, classes were empty, while the elite force from the Dawn Agency, known as Etnarch, patrolled the campus area. On the rooftop, Rito heard mockery from her classmates because the newly graduated Etnarch members seemed to be showing off. Below, students were debating the importance of staying indoors. Tomo was outside with Aoi, who disliked that they were being forced to work on security even though they had already reached level 3. When Tomo started advising Aoi to take the job more seriously, 2 Ednarch members appeared and told her to calm down. They figured nothing much would happen and were just following orders so they could return to their living quarters in peace. On the other side, Lilith was also on guard and remembered her conversation with Sakuya after receiving the conference invitation. At that moment, Toru appeared with Julie. Lilith thought they were finally ready to try a relationship trio with her. However, Toru revealed that he had heard rumors about Edward Walker's possible attendance at the conference and wanted to know what was really happening. Lilith explained that Edward Walker was a high-ranking member of an underground military organization in a foreign country where he had founded Libra. Their main goal was to achieve an absolute version of the 2 things Sakuya had talked about at the entrance ceremony. According to Lilith, Reign was essentially a group of people who cared about everything related to achieving absolute rights. The conference was an opportunity for them to resolve all existing issues. Not long after that, Sakuya entered the conference room and was immediately greeted by an alcoholic monk named Udi. Clovis showed his class by offering a single rose, while Dark Ray Disaster held his nose, trying to avoid a possible simp fever. When Silent Diva greeted her and mentioned that the academy provided a polite atmosphere, Edward Walker appeared with a warm smile that slightly brightened the mood. As the meeting began, Toru and Julie asked Lilith about the absolute rights they had heard of. Lilith decided to give them a bit of information, mentioning that it related to taking their souls beyond limits. Toru then guessed, "So you mean pushing the limits of our spirit?" Lilith also reminded them of the Academy's purpose, which was to create exceeds like them with Lucifer and help them maximize their abilities to get closer to the ultimate goal. On the other hand, Edward had just made a request to form an alliance between Libra and the Academy students. Edward thought that combining their forces could be highly beneficial. By collaborating on all of Sakuya's research on the students and working on the unit, they could reach their goals faster. However, Sakuya declined the offer. She explained that they each had different objectives, so an alliance would be pointless. Unwilling to accept this, Edward then threw down the Father of the Year Act and criticized Sakuya, saying the Academy's methods were just a waste of time and resources. Sakuya countered by reminding him of his past failure with her grandfather, who had expelled him from the Academy. Tensions rose as she recounted the unfortunate incident, and it was clear that Edward's equipment began to tremble with suppressed emotion. After calming himself, Edward tried to stand tall again and said that his days of playing the small boss were over. Edward then suggested playing a game, with Libra planning to attack the Academy while the Exceeds fought them until one side surrendered or was wiped out. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement, so Edward decided to go ahead with the game. Back outside, Toru told the girls that he didn't like having to sacrifice so much for the Academy's goal. So, Lilith explained to him how life works. At that moment, they heard the sound of jet engines echoing. The Ednarch received a transmission informing them that Libra was on its way and ready to start the battle. At the same time, Libra began descending from the sky, with Kevin taking command of the battle mission. Shortly after, Toru and his crew gathered to face Kevin and the Libra soldiers. At that moment, they heard approaching footsteps and saw Miyabi, who had just returned from a heartbreak vacation. Tomo wanted to run toward her, but Lilith stopped her, noticing a strange look in Miyabi's eyes before she suddenly activated her unit suit. The Ednarch immediately drew their weapons to attack Miyabi, while Toru tried to stop them. However, Miyabi activated her weapon and, as they charged in, she brushed them aside like flies. Miyabi asked Toru if she was finally good enough for him. She then charged to attack, and her speed left Toru with no time to react. But luckily, Julie was there to save him as usual. As the dust settled in the spot where Toru should have been hit, Miyabi told Julie to stop interfering. Everyone then activated their weapons to face Miyabi, stunned by her new strength. Kevin explained that Miyabi was the first person to have both her Exceed and unit activated simultaneously. At the meeting, Edward once again asked for Sakuya's opinion. However, Sakuya was still calmly sipping her tea. After giving them a quick crash course, Kevin touched his face, while Tomo tried to knock him down. Tomo ran toward Miyabi, asking if Miyabi had been forced to do this before promising to protect her. Lilith told her to step aside, but in that moment, her ribs were shattered as Miyabi slapped her with immense force, calling her pathetic for thinking Tomo could protect her. Seeing the blood from her injury, they realized Miyabi was fighting seriously and not holding back. Lilith told them that Miyabi might have been brainwashed during the unit integration process. Back at the conference, Edward told everyone about how hard he had been training Miyabi in his facility over the past few days. Edward had even managed to make her strong enough to take on some of the higher-ranking members of Libra on her own. Proudly, Edward then asked if Sakuya had reconsidered his alliance offer. However, Sakuya still firmly declined. Sakuya explained that a cultured old man like Edward, who was involved in meaningless activities, was in no way suited to work with her. Sakuya felt the alliance would only turn her into a clown in the middle of the meeting. Meanwhile, Miyabi had just finished her story about the training she had undergone with Edward. Kevin, always ready to give his perspective, reminded everyone that the decision ultimately lay with Miyabi. Tomo, who had always seen Miyabi as the sweet person she knew, found it hard to believe that Miyabi would take a different path. However, when Miyabi revealed that she had always hated how Tomo made her feel like a friend, Tomo was shocked. Kevin then turned his attention to Toru, starting to mock him for messing up Mega Melon Miyabi. This only made Toru angrier, and he quickly activated his weapon before charging at Kevin. However, Miyabi stopped him, curious if the accusations about the baby carrots were true. It took Toru a long time to respond, which only frustrated Miyabi more. Pushing him back with her weapon, Miyabi began attacking while struggling to maintain her sanity. Unfortunately, Toru lost focus, leaving himself vulnerable to a potentially devastating strike. Thankfully, their friends arrived to save him with their weapons, reminding him to start thinking clearly. Easily brushing off all those attacks, Miyabi gave Toru a chance to admit that he wasn't really hiding his insecurities behind all his claims of not being ready to love. Toru tried to talk her out of her madness, but it seemed Miyabi was already too far gone and started attacking again. Seeing her slowly turn into a psychopath, Tomo began to realize that the Miyabi she knew and spent time with was no longer there. Kevin, observing the situation, clapped his hands in surprise that they were still standing there, then told them to move on without him. Kevin informed them that there were other soldiers fighting across the campus that he needed to lead, along with some plans he had to execute. Kevin also had his own plans to capture Sakuya. Kevin believed that her much more active mind compared to Miyabi's would make her the perfect hybrid. With that, Kevin departed with his soldiers to find her. However, Toru tried to chase after them, only to be stopped by Miyabi, who showed off her swaying melons as she twirled her firearm. After Tomo's chains managed to halt Miyabi's psychotic behavior, Tomo instructed everyone to leave Miyabi to her. After giving an inspiring speech about the strength of women, they all agreed to let the wounded girl face her bloodthirsty partner, and moved on. Shortly after, they arrived at the conference building and encountered the Liba soldiers already waiting there. Aoi and Lilith started to lure the soldiers away so that Toru could reach Kevin. In that moment, Aoi didn't want to miss the chance and asked if he could get promoted after the battle. Lilith reminded him not to reach for the stars, given that he was too short for such high ambitions. They agreed to team up temporarily to take down the soldiers. Meanwhile, Toru managed to get into the building with Julie, where they found Kevin waiting. Kevin explained that the plan to kidnap Sakuya was actually a tactic to lure them out for a personal fight. Kevin wanted a rematch after their duel on the boat was interrupted and swore he'd make Toru relive his past trauma. With spirits high, they began the battle as the sun set. On the other hand, Miyabi started to feel bored with the one-sided duel going on. She asked Tomo to surrender, but Tomo tried to remind Miyabi of the good times they'd spent together. Unfortunately, Miyabi had lost her patience and no longer cared. She tried to remind Tomo of her dedication in their partnership, managing to touch her heart for a moment. But soon after, Miyabi charged in, shouting that she never cared about being best friends before crushing Tomo's remaining ribs. Tears of sadness welled up in Miyabi's eyes as she shared about the relentless training she endured just so Toru would see her as worthy for his affection. And at that moment, Tomo started to realize that life wasn't only about the power of women. Back at the conference building, Kevin took a break from the 2-on-1 battle to remind them of their decision to leave the injured Tomo behind. With high emotions, Miyabi continued the fight, while Toru and Julie stated they believed in the power of friendship. However, at that moment, Miyabi was the only one in control, while Tomo struggled to stay conscious. Tomo intended to bring Miyabi back to her senses, but suddenly Miyabi started to rise again and told Tomo that Toru didn't like her, in a psychotic tone that was unsettling. Miyabi then turned it around, promising to make her swallow her words before throwing her weapon at her head. After managing to dodge, Tomo requested a quick version of her rejection. As Miyabi shared that with her, Tomo assured Miyabi that she didn't need to unite to prove herself. As Miyabi's weapon got closer, Tomo told her that she had never fallen in love before and believed Miyabi was stronger for being brave enough to do so. Like she always told Miyabi, she never needed the unit to prove herself. Miyabi began to struggle as the fear of the unit within her started to shatter. With reactions weighing heavily on her mind, Miyabi tried to stop Tomo from coming closer, but Tomo was already determined to let go of all hope and step into weapon range. In a flash, Tomo slapped the unit off her face, and that moment of liberation exposed Miyabi's evil plan. Tomo sincerely covered for her and promised to help her as a true partner. Kevin, realizing what was happening, started to panic. However, Toru and Julie reminded him of the power of friendship. As Kevin threw a disc toward Julie, she sliced it easily. But in an instant, everything exploded, and Toru immediately rushed over, hoping Julie hadn't been sent back to her father. In the chaos, Kevin called on some soldiers and ordered them to reunite the couple in the afterlife. Moments later, Julie woke up and saw Toru standing there, looking quite battered. Kevin, beside him, praised Toru for managing to protect her for the first time. After wishing him luck, Kevin ordered the soldiers to resume firing. But Julie quickly told Toru to save himself. Remembering all the helplessness and dark past he had since meeting Julie, Toru took the bottle Sakuya had given him and told Kevin that he was going into the zone. Kevin gave the command, but as the soldiers began shooting, Toru injected himself. In an instant, the bullets vanished. Kevin started to panic and ordered them to fire again, but just then, the soldiers were thrown back as Aloy and Lilith had finished up their business outside. After telling Julie to stay alert and take action, Toru activated his fire power. Not wanting to lose, Kevin launched a missile to stop him. However, Toru's new power managed to deflect the explosion. With a fiery spirit, Toru leapt and charged his attack, then used Kevin's head to create a small crater in the building. Seeing Kevin sprawled out, Edward began to panic, and the rest left, laughing at him. Sakuya then told Edward to consider retirement to avoid disgracing his lineage and fully bear the weight of his failure. Shortly after, Kevin was still lying on the ground, stunned, when Edward appeared and began attacking him. As Kevin laughed, Edward decided to play his trump card and was about to activate it. However, as Edward coughed, Kevin, who had just made a hole in Edward's chest, took the item and activated it, determined to push himself to the highest unit level so he could defeat Toru. A few minutes later, Toru was on his way back to the dorm building with his gang when Kevin appeared and requested another round. After Aoi charged in and was rendered powerless, Lilith shot at him. However, Kevin dodged with his enhanced speed and immediately knocked her down. Kevin then activated an additional device to fly before blowing up the conference building, wanting to showcase his new level of strength. After chasing Toru and Julie along the forest path, Kevin attacked and blasted Toru into the clock tower before he could insult him. Julie caught up, and the two of them tried to strike together, but Kevin easily blocked their attack and knocked them down. Kevin then attempted to blast them into the afterlife, but Toru activated his enhanced weapon version to shield them. After flying and looking around the academy, Kevin decided to start blowing everything up while firing at them. Toru, confused by Kevin's madness, asked, "Did your dad never come back with the milk?" With most of the academy in flames, Kevin set his sights on the dormitory building and began charging up to blow it up as well. Just as he unleashed the blast, Rito appeared, using her fire to redirect it back, though she ultimately collapsed. Rito took a few minutes to catch her breath after all the chaos. While all the students cheered her on, Rito signaled to her classmates, indicating she was ignoring them. In fear, Toru and Julie fled into the forest, trying to stay out of danger. Julie took advantage of the line of sight to close in on Kevin, and launched an attack that managed to slice off one of his weapons. After that, she quickly pulled back. Toru tried to reach Julie just as Kevin aimed at his head and started shooting. Swiftly, Toru shielded Julie using his fire once more. However, at that moment, Toru's face went pale as Kevin had already left a sword in the center of his body. With his weapon gone, Toru collapsed face down, and Julie immediately tried to wake him as he was losing blood. Seeing Toru unresponsive, Julie went into a rage. Although Kevin initially claimed he was thrilled to witness Julie's dark power, that excitement quickly faded as Julie attacked with a speed that was hard to match. Kevin attempted to escape, but Julie pursued him relentlessly. In a desperate attempt to fend her off, Kevin attacked back and managed to knock one of Julie's swords away. With some barriers in place, Julie trapped Kevin and bounced him around, intensifying the speed of her attacks. Finally, Julie broke through Kevin's defenses, opening up his chest. Toru woke up just as Kevin was thrown from the sky, and he rushed over before Julie could finish him off. When Toru told Julie to stop, she shifted her focus to him. Without hesitation, Toru reactivated his fire to block Julie's attack. Meanwhile, the intensity of Julie's dark power began to wear down her body. In the silence, Toru reflected on their life together. Remembering his promise to protect her, he lowered his shield and let Julie strike him, getting close enough to embrace her. With a god-tier pickup line, Toru managed to snap Julie out of it. After apologizing for nearly ending things, Toru, acting like a true alpha, declared he would sacrifice his entire arm to protect her. Kevin, seeing Toru patting his head, was reminded of the traumatic memories of his older brother. Kevin swore to destroy them. Feeling bored with all of this, Toru told Kevin to stop attacking. However, Kevin started attacking again, so Toru prepared to defeat him alongside Julie. They combined their powers to create a barrier strong enough to block Kevin's explosions. Kevin thought they were done for as Toru's fire began to blaze, but with their integrated strength, they unleashed a powerful energy explosion that cancelled out Kevin's blast and lit up the sky. After a moment of shock, Kevin readied himself for the next explosion. Julie tried to grab her sword but tripped. Toru picked up the sword for her and jumped just as Kevin was about to blow her up. In a pivotal moment, Toru managed to slash Kevin, finally putting him to sleep and saving them from a huge mess that could have happened. A few days later, reconstruction had begun, and Toru had just woken up in the hospital. There, Miyabi and the other gang members were waiting to apologize to him. After accepting their apologies, they heard a commotion outside and saw Rito running from a crowd of students. Toru then told Rito that her rescue at the dorm had made her a local celebrity. After the recovery process, Toru was released and met with Lilith, who handed him a file about Kevin, the underground villain, after his older brother and family had been sent to heaven. Lilith then informed him that Julie had been released and gave him permission to go see her, on the condition that Toru would work out with her later. After Toru left, Lilith asked Sakuya about the extra attention Sakuya had been giving Toru. It turned out Sakuya was hiding her obsession with ordinary tales, trying to create total chaos around her. Toru ran across campus, searching for Julie. He recalled placing his beads at the top of the clock tower before finally running to meet her. When they met, Julie revealed that she wasn't an Exceed like Toru. Julie had gained her powers after the traumatic loss of her father, which felt incredibly suffocating. It turned out Julie was an Elway, similar to Exceed, as they also formed weapons with their soul power. However, Julie did it naturally and didn't need Luciful. After apologizing for lying, Julie also expressed her regret for feeling too weak to keep Toru safe without relying on her dark power. She asked Toru to remain her partner. They decided to vow again, which brought Toru back to his past. His story as a villain began to unfold, and Toru pondered whether Sakuya was just a dwarf who always needed protection or if Sakuya was also hiding a big secret neatly tucked away in her mind.